You may think that the concept of a 7-seater SUV is a relatively new one, but let me remind you that the Mahindra Scorpio that came about in 2002 and kick-started the mid-size SUV segment was indeed a 7-seater. Now you ask, what is our obsession with a 7-seater? Well, this is India, the land of 1 billion people. Now the latest and the most happening contender in the mid-size SUV segment is the MG Hector. With its large dimensions, it's pushed the boundaries for this segment. But with its relatively affordable price band, it's set its feet firmly in the mid-size SUV segment. So today we have a new derivative of the Hector with us, the MG Hector Plus. MG has taken this as an opportunity to spruce up the Hector's appeal a little bit with a set of cosmetic enhancements. Now when it comes to these new cosmetic enhancements, the biggest change perhaps and the nicest one is the new front grille. All of that excess chrome is now gone and you get a nice chrome studded all black unit. It's very prominent, it stands out, and I think it looks really nice, especially for something like this, an urban SUV. The front bumper has been restyled as well. Now when you come to the side profile of the updated Hector, well, everything's pretty much the same, except now the car is a whole 65 mm longer. That's quite a substantial increase in its length. That's of course to accommodate the extra 2 seats. Now we'll get to that later, but for the moment let's step around to the back of the car and see what's new here. Now when it comes to the rear of the Hector Plus, well, you get new tail lights. Essentially they're the same units but they're restyled, and the bumper is new as well. I like all of the different elements and how they flow over there. So overall this starry blue paint shade for the Hector also makes it stand out on the road. So while on the face of it you may not be able to tell this car apart by the increase in its length, there's a big plus badge, and well, the new front grille is going to give it all away. But now it's time to take a look at the most important update in this car, the third row set of seats. Right, so since there's a third row of seats now, let's get this done from the beginning. Let's see how easy or difficult it is to fold the second row seat. Right, so you have one lever here for the backrest and you slide it forward from there. But that's pretty tight, so this is going to be a climb. All right, watch. All right, that's me going in. And I step in. Okay, so I have a headrest here. Basically now MG says that this is a third row for teenagers, but you know how tall teenagers are today, so this really is a seat for children. The seat base is very low. There's very little room from the floor to the seat base, so in fact you have no under thigh support. My legs are pointing all the way up. So this is definitely not a comfortable position to be in. I'll tell you what, this is that car that you go visiting your parents, and since your parents are now in the second row, you shove the kids in the back. Let me get my seat belt out and put this on. Man, this is a squeeze. It's quite a tight space. In fact, these windows are also pretty small, but that huge panoramic sunroof really helps, you know, lend some airiness to the cabin. Otherwise the seats are tall here, you're sitting very low, so this definitely is not a place for adults. Nevertheless, MG's given you 2 cup holders over here, 1 bottle holder over there. You get the fan speed controls here, there are 2 AC vents, and your kids get a USB port. It is very important for a car like this to have boot space, so let's see how much space there is over there. Right, so midsize SUVs get electric tailgates now. That's quite impressive. Oh my, all right, that's 155 liters of boot space, and it is very small. It's barely enough for your grocery runs. Rest assured you can't do long distance trips in this car with luggage, so that's a bit of a disappointment. Anyway, they say the second row seats are new. They're bucket seat units, so let's hop in there and see what that's like. Right, so now I've stepped into the second row, and I had set these seats for the comfort of third row occupants. Let me see how much space I can see. All right, oh, that's a lot of space for second row occupants. So I would say that this car is great for second row occupants. It's got some nice and comfortable bucket seats, and because you can push it all the way back, there's a lot of leg room and I can sit very comfortably. There's an armrest here and there's one on the door pad, and there's plenty of room. The seat is nice and reclined, so I like the second row of this car with the new bucket seats. But let me see if I make some more room for third row occupants. All right, that seems like a fair compromise. So over here, even if you make room for third row occupants, there's plenty of space and you'll always be in comfort. Right, now so stepping into the front of the Hector, you get a nice beige upholstery which looks very premium. You get some of that on the dash too, it's very nice. And the touchscreen infotainment system now has some chat-up commands. More or less everything else is the same here. In terms of powertrain as well, you get a petrol engine and a diesel engine, 1.5 litre petrol, 2 litre diesel. Both units are now BS6 compliant. This particular model is the double clutch automatic petrol. Right, so let's see how this BS6 Hector drives. Now the MG Hector, from day one, this one's been a posemobile. The sheer size of the thing, the styling, all of it's been a little bit in your face, and it's a car that you get noticed in instantly just because of the amount of presence that it brings to the table. And that's game, set and match for MG already, because typical mid-size SUV buyers today, they just want to be noticed. That's why they buy an SUV. They want something big, they want something that stands out on the road, and it's more of an eye candy situation here. In which case the MG Hector just shines through and through because it looks like nothing else on the road, which is why it's found so many takers since the time of its launch. People were just impressed by the sheer amount of size and metal that you get for your money. Now, as I mentioned, the Hector is a posemobile. It's an urban SUV. This one's not about off-roading or sporty driving or any of that, no. This one's just about making a statement. And on that account, it's done very well for itself. Another aspect that MG caters to very well in the eyes of today's demanding customers is providing equipment. This car comes loaded to the gills with everything. Well, there is a drowsiness sensor in this car in case you're feeling sleepy, it'll beep. There is this huge infotainment system with connected car technology. Now there's a lot of chit-chat functions as well, which supposing you have a long commute and you're bored, you can talk to the car. Let me show you how. Hello MG.
I'm here.
How am I looking today?
You look amazing.
See, it's just random stuff that you can ask the car and it'll talk to you about. So that's something interesting to have as well. So I was basically playing about trying to find new toys in here. The cup holders are illuminated. The Apple CarPlay system works very nicely. There's a preloaded Ghana app in the infotainment system. So it's all very nice. It's all very high tech. My only complaint here is that, be it the sunroof or the visor, you got to really hold down those buttons for complete operation. So it's not a one-touch system over there. Other things, well, I was just looking around and I found a USB port under the rear view mirror of this car. I don't know what that's for, but just out of curiosity, I plugged that in and plugged it to my phone and it started charging my phone. So I don't know what else I'm going to find if I start looking around in here. Maybe they could have given us a day-night automatic rear view mirror, but I very much like the Infinity sound system. It's very nice and it goes very well with the modern infotainment system. Complaints? Well, there is a slight amount of delay sometimes in the screen. It's not there all the time, but supposing I'm driving along, I've just come out of the music app and I press the aircon button. There's a bit of a delay before that screen changes. So you can't tell when that's going to happen, but it does happen, which is a slight disappointment. Right, so as I mentioned earlier, the Hector is all about grabbing eyeballs, and on that front it does very well. But this 1.5 litre petrol engine mated to the double clutch transmission over here is all about making this car a lazy cruise mobile. Kickdown acceleration is actually fairly slow. So this car does great in urban environments and the city driving. It's very, very comfortable to drive. The shifts are seamless. You don't even feel a single gear shift. On that account, it's a great car. But the moment you start driving it faster, no matter you try sport mode or Tiptronic mode, those gear shifts and downshifts are slow. And when it comes to ride and handling, it's that typical trait of the Hector when it comes to its powertrain. That's how its suspension setup and steering have been set up as well. It's an all-around setup for comfort. The steering is very light. At slow speeds, it's very easy to twirl. And even when you get going, it's a very light steering setup. And as the speeds build, the steering continues to remain very light. In fact, it's a little bit floaty and it doesn't really inspire confidence. But as I mentioned, this car isn't about driving appeal, it's about driving comfort. And that's very evident in the Hector's suspension setup as well. It's very floaty, it's very comfortable. In fact, when it comes to the usual size of bumps, the Hector dismisses them very easily and very comfortably. But as the speeds build and supposing you hit expressways, that's where over your expansion joints and the like, you can feel a lot of that wavy movement from the suspension. And that's where its springy setup is evident. So in my opinion, the Hector is more of an urban SUV rather than one that's designed for cross-country journeys. So at slow speeds, you can waft around town ever so comfortably and in an absolutely effortless manner. So that's what this car is all about. It's a downright posemobile. And now thanks to those bucket seats at the back, you can be just as comfortable in the second row seats. You can recline them, you have so much more leg room now. So it's a really comfortable car, not just to drive, but to travel in as well. As for those third row seats, well, MG is honest enough to admit that they're for teenagers, but I'd rather say that they're for children. So there's no doubts that the Hector makes for a great family car. But it's also a car that aspiring young executives and the like would love to buy. It's a car that really makes a statement and lets others know that you've arrived.